in the name of absolution. Across the galaxy, the Dark Angels strike without warning and vanish without explanation. For millennia, they have slaughtered the Imperium's foes and defended its citizens with grim efficiency. Yet for every noble act preserved within the chapter's annals, there is a dark deed. Always the secret hunt for the fallen drives them, and each hope for redemption hides damnation in its shadow. Millennium 30 to 31, Dawn of the Imperium, the Great Crusade. As warp storms subside, the Emperor and his newly created Space Marine legions forge outwards from Terra to reconquer the galaxy. First amongst the legion's number are those who would come to be known as the Dark Angels. It is while reclaiming the planets colonized by humanity during the Age of Strife that the Primarch Lion L. Johnson, one of the lost sons of the Emperor, is discovered on Caliban, and is reunited with the legion made from his gene seed. Under L. Johnson's leadership, the newly renamed Dark Angels serve the Emperor's cause with great distinction, claiming more victories than any other legion, save for the 16th, the Lunar Wars, under the command of L. Johnson's brother, Horus. The Horus Heresy. Knowing the Dark Angels would remain stubbornly loyal to the Emperor, Horus orders them to the eastern fringe on the far side of the galaxy. Hampered by distance, ambushes set up by the Night Lords, and demonic attacks, the Dark Angels cannot reach Terra in time to participate in the defense of the Emperor's palace, the culminating battle of the Civil War. Millennium 31 to 34, Age of Warding, the Great Scouring. With the Emperor grievously wounded by Horus and confined to his golden throne, the armies of the Imperium strike back against the traitors. The Dark Angels Legion plays a significant role in these campaigns of vengeance and is integral in driving out the forces of chaos from multiple systems and forcing them to retreat into the Eye of Terror. Fall of Caliban. Hoping to find respite upon their home world, the Dark Angels instead find war and betrayal. Caliban is torn apart, and following the vicious fighting on its surface, Lionel Johnson cannot be found. Only a fragment of the planet remains, and upon it rests the mighty fortress that would soon become the Legion's new home. A fell legacy. Still reeling from treachery and the loss of their Primarch, and beset by warp storms, the Dark Angels are rocked to their foundations by the discovery that the destruction of Caliban had not killed all their brothers corrupted by Luther. Energy signatures obtained by the Legion's librarians briefly registered the scattered presence of many traitors believed to have been slain, although these leads soon fade. It is unknown how many recruits Luther had on Caliban, and how many of those survived is a question that will haunt the Dark Angels for millennia to come. A Legion no more. The Dark Angels accept, for the most part, the strictures of the Codex Astartes, splitting what remains of their Legion into chapters. New blood. With Caliban gone, the Dark Angels must establish new recruiting worlds for themselves and their newly separated successor chapters. Using the confusion of the times to their advantage, they choose numerous planets, obfuscating their precise number and nature. The Forgotten Wars. The Dark Angels and their successor chapters embark upon a harrowing campaign that ends at the edge of the Eye of Terror. Cypher is involved, although accounts differ upon whether he is purposefully instigating the disasters that befall the Sons of the Lion, or attempting to lead them to safety. In the final battles, only the Unforgiven's unflinching resolve allows them to escape, albeit at a high price. The Lion's Saber chapter is destroyed. All records and deeds of the campaign are concealed. Second Mortis Gate Campaign. The entire Dark Angels chapter takes up arms against the renegade forces of the Death Guard. 3 months of storm-racked warfare see the traitor forces driven from their strongholds, and the Dark Angel standards raised in victory. The Red Wings of Redemption. Aided by the vast armories of the Rock, the Angels of Redemption restructure and re-equip their first and second companies, the Red Wings, in emulation of the Dark Angels Deathwing and Ravenwing. The other successor chapters soon follow suit. Increasing observation. As the Imperium tightens its control following the Great Scouring and the ensuing consolidation of power, the Dark Angels and their successor chapters find themselves under increasing scrutiny. Only their flawless battle record and eagerness to persecute the Imperium's enemies allow them to avoid censure. Noble Passing. While leading his chapter to victory in the drawn-out Bloodpox campaign against the Death Guard and Brotherhood of Plague, the 12th Supreme Grand Master of the Dark Angels contracts a loathsome disease. His rapid deformation convinces him to pass the Lion Helm to a successor, and he voluntarily enters the Rock's reactor to ensure no contamination is spread. Millennium 35 to Millennium 36. Age of Foreboding. The enemy unmasked. Following Cypher's trail, the Dark Angels are led to believe that at least one member of the newly declared Council of Nova Terra is one of the Fallen. The Ravenwing is deployed in a daring raid upon Nova Terra itself, but fails to secure any prisoners. The Deathwing Unleashed. Segmentum Pacificus becomes the center of civil war, and the Inner Circle continues to follow the many clues that have led them deep into the internecine fighting. Known to the Unforgiven as the Hrakon campaign, they systematically seek Obadiah Hrakon, the despotic ruler who has been pivotal in the rise of Nova Terra. Hrakon and his followers take refuge on a piratical port world, prompting the Dark Angels to unleash the entire Deathwing, supported by the Terminator armored first companies as several successor chapters. Deploying in sequential teleportations, the Deathwing and their allies prosecute a campaign of bloody slaughter that annihilates the traitors and any unfortunate enough to be in their vicinity. The Dark Angel Hrakon is finally subdued following a desperate duel with the Grand Master of the Deathwing, and is transported back to the Rock. His death is not an easy one. Brother against brother. Still operating largely in the Segmentum Pacificus, the Dark Angels take a lead role in the fierce fighting that characterizes the era known as the Cataclysm of Souls. In addition to putting down all who reject the High Lords of Terror and the Ecclesiarchy, they search for signs of the Fallen. Although the Unforgiven chapters are seen as loyal by the wider Imperium, many dark rumors tell of the Angels of Redemption abandoning their duties to pursue their own veiled missions. The Rebulous Cleansing. The Unforgiven chapters fight a 30-year-long war against the cultists of the Rebulous system. Many lives are lost before the war ends with the destruction of the artificial moons of Ix. Siege of Dominus Prime. The Dark Angels and Angels of Vengeance both deploy their entire first companies to end the 5-year deadlock with the rebel tyrant of Dominus Prime. Official reports detail that nigh on 200 Terminators crack open the unassailable fortress and massacre every last traitor within. In truth, the Unforgiven's numbers were substantially higher, and several prisoners were taken back to the Rock for questioning. Millennium 37 to 39. Age of Execration. The Battle at Midpoint. An Eldari fleet threatens to destroy the massive space docks of Midpoint in the Argones sector. The sudden appearance of the Rock and the Dark Angels fleet tips the battle in the Imperium's favor. The Xenos retreat, but not before the firepower of the Rock annihilates their capital ship and a half-dozen smaller vessels of their armada. To this day, the savage hulls and floating corpses can still be seen floating in the depths of space just outside the docks. Betrayal at Zambek. Abandoning Allied Imperial forces during the 7-year siege of Ulstan III, the Ravenwing follow a trail that leads all the way to the Imperial Governor of Zambek, a key Imperial planet known as the Gateway to the Gothic Sector, Before they can apprehend the governor for questioning, open rebellion erupts, and the planet secedes from the Imperium. The Dark Angels task force sent to investigate are surrounded upon Zambek by heretic Astartes of the Alpha Legion. Only a timely intervention by the Deathwing prevents the annihilation of the Second Company. Despite the Ravenwing's pursuit, the governor, determined to be the fallen angel who was once Brother Solas, escapes with the remnants of his Chaos Space Marine allies. The Amalgamation Schism. The arrival of the Space Hulk Amalgamation triggers a series of events that sees the Crimson Saber chapter estranged from the Imperium. A conflict with the Dark Angels over an interrogator chaplain's unorthodox excruciation of a prisoner is thought to be at the heart of the matter. The Altered Crusade. The Dark Angels become instrumental to the Altered Crusade, a decade-long campaign that ends on the colony world of Altered 156. Although the Crusade's ruling council ordered a single regiment of Imperial Guard to assault the wayward colonists, the Dark Angels, acting on information they refused to disclose to the council, insist on making the assault themselves. Fighting alongside elements of the Ravenwing and the Fifth Company, the Deathwing apprehends the heretic leader Elucidax the Keeper. Known to the Dark Angels as Zariah, one-time captain of the Dark Angels Legion 14th Assault Company, and one of the most dangerous of the Fallen. The 100-Planet Uprising. Pursuing the notorious Fallen known as Cypher, the Dark Angels become mired in a long and costly war with the heretic cults of the mad priest Aldrich, the Subverter. The Forlex Rescue. A Necron stasis crypt awakens beneath the Imperial colony of Forlex. Striking from orbit, the Guardians of the Covenant drive the Xenos back below ground. Though the cost in lives is steep, well over 100,000 colonists are safely evacuated. Battle for Styx. Tau forces attempt to annex the Dark Angels' recruiting world of Styx. The rock itself arrives in orbit to defend the planet, and the Dark Angels' response is so violent that the Xenos are wiped out in a single day. The Last Hope of Perdition. A Dark Angel's investigation of a Space Hulk newly materialized out of the warp discovers strong elements of the renegades known as the Cleaved. The battle is won when cyclonic charges destroy the Hulk's engine rooms, though at the cost of Supreme Grandmaster Zakaron, who manually triggers the blast. Grimm's Landing. The Dark Angels' recruiting world of Grimm's Landing falls into civil war after the Alpha Legion and Night Lords incite rebellion there. The Angels of Vengeance respond, fighting through wave after wave of renegades, cultists, and madmen. Finally, despite massive casualties, they exterminate every living thing on the surface of Grimm's Landing. Millennium 40 to 41. Age of Anathema. Segara's Due. The Dark Angels track the Fallen known as Neziek to the world of Vrydos. They run their quarry to ground just as he is about to escape through a webway portal. However, the Dark Angels' efforts at capture are foiled when a sizable band of Harlequins burst from the portal. Fighting furiously, the Harlequins hold the wrathful Space Marines at bay long enough to snatch Neziek and drag him into the Labyrinth Dimension. The Makarian Heresy. Over 3 decades, the Dark Angels are tasked with suppressing the civil wars that are ongoing across many of the territories gained by the Makarian conquests. The Ravenwing uncover several corrupt cults instigated by the Alpha Legion and the Wordbearers Traitor Legions, as well as discovering the unmistakable signs of Cypher's presence. The Deathwing are deployed in response, and several of the Fallen are captured amidst the ensuing carnage. The rebelling populaces, regarded as mere obstacles to the Dark Angels' true mission, are slaughtered in their millions. The Fourth Quadrant Rebellion. Over 10 years, a series of incredibly destructive wars engulfs a quarter of the Segmentum Solar. Mystery surrounds the architecture of this catastrophe, but the Dark Angels fight alongside the Imperial Fists to end the threat once and for all. Massacre on Minora. The Deathwing assault Minora in the Periliac system, capturing or killing every inhabitant. This action raises protests from several other chapters, who claim the Dark Angels' aid was needed to defend Periliac Prime against a massive Orc war. Phase Uprising. A Dark Angel strike force explores a region of the galaxy previously engulfed by warp storms. On the surface of Phase 5, they are engaged by cybernetically altered humans in the thrall of a blasphemous machine intelligence. The Dark Angels disable the logic engines of the sacrilegious entity, freeing the local population, but the people of Phase angrily reject Imperial rule, craving communion with the machine. In a grueling campaign, the techno-recidivists are eventually wiped off the face of the world. Cephlagum. With the aid of the 3rd and 4th Companies, the Ravenwing hunt the possessed governor of the toxic world of Cephlagum. During a fierce battle in the gubernatorial palace, they summon the Deathwing to strike the killing blow. The death of Nibirius. Hot on the trail of the ever-elusive Cypher, Commander Nibirius, Supreme Grand Master of the Dark Angels, is led into an ambush and slain by Chaos Space Marines. Azrael leads the Deathwing to recover his body, bringing an end to the shadow-shrouded conflict now known as the Ramiel Betrayal. For this and many other heroic deeds, Azrael is named Nibirius' successor. War Groblinig. The Dark Angels join the Imperial defense against the vast hordes of War Groblinig. It is through the Dark Angels' sheer remorseless determination that the Orcs are defeated, though at great cost. Rinsweld and Badlanding. A Dark Angel strike force, including major Ravenwing elements, is sent to aid the Crimson Fist in reclaiming the worlds of the Loki system from Orc control. The Canyons of Chorus. Azrael leads a force to purge the Orcs of War Gutgouger from Chorus. Wings of Nephilim jet fighters engage in furious dogfights through the planet's storm-lashed canyon maze, covering the Dark Angels' final push against Gutgouger's kill fort. Wormwood. Several squads of Deathwing board the space hulk Wormwood. None are ever seen again, and records of the action are erased. The Shadow Shrine. A strike force under Chaplain Asmodai battle a Cormorite host in the shrine city of Gothala. Thousands of mandrakes fall upon the Space Marines from squirming portals of sentient shadow, and it seems the Dark Angels must be overrun. However, Asmodai holds his force together, eventually leading an attack to collapse the Dark Angels' portals and end the nightmare. Storm of Vengeance. The war of Gazgul, Thraka, and Nazdrek invades Presinia 4. The Dark Angels' 3rd Company, under the command of Master Belial, succeed in defending the planet, despite being vastly outnumbered. The 3rd Tyrannic War. Several Dark Angel strike forces join the battle against the far-reaching tendrils of High Fleet Leviathan as they spread deeper into the Imperium. To catch Cypher. The Black Templars fight alongside the Dark Angels on the planet of Parabulas in an attempt to weaken the renegade pirates who use the world as their base. However, a dispute over a Black Templar's prisoner causes both chapters to briefly engage. The incident is reported, and an inquisitorial inquiry commences. The Rich Prize. The Deathwing smash the renegade enclave of Drakenhell. Over 24 fallen are seized, and the sails of the Rock ring with agonized screams for many months. Dark Vengeance. Seeking to avenge the death of Company Master Zadakiel on Stern's remembrance, and to strike down a foe who appeared to know their darkest secret, the Dark Angels' 5th Company engaged the Crimson Slaughter on the world of Bane's Landing. The fight is a desperate one, and only an act of supreme self-sacrifice prevents the Chaos Worshippers from achieving their aims. Howl of the Wolfen. The return of the heavily mutated Space Wolves 13th Company prompts Supreme Grand Master Azrael to launch a crusade to the Fenris system. which upon arrival is found to be in the throes of a demonic invasion. Seeing no other recourse, Azrael orders the bombardment of one of the most infested of the system's worlds, Midgardia, even as the shape-shifting changeling is detected aboard the rock. It is revealed that the demon has been responsible for manipulating events, setting the Dark Angels against their long-time rivals, the Space Wolves, as part of a larger scheme orchestrated by Magnus the Red, demon primarch of the Thousand Suns. A full-blown demonic invasion of the rock follows, and through the combined efforts of the two rival chapters, as well as a detachment of Grey Knights who had followed their own scryings to the system, it is repelled. Despite their brief alliance, however, the Dark Angels' relationship with the Space Wolves is left more frayed than ever by their confrontation. The 13th Black Crusade. A vast tide of Chaos worshippers pours from the Eye of Terror into the Cadian Gate. Detecting many fallen amongst the horde, the Dark Angels risk all by ordering the Unforgiven to join them in a headlong assault against the renegade forces. Their forces split across the Cadian sector. The Dark Angels are involved in many battles, including heroic defensive actions against the demonic warhost led by the greater demon, Karhanok. Increasing warpstorm activity ensures the different forces cannot reunite. Only the 4th Company under Master Karahael arrives on Cadia itself, where they and their strike cruiser, Sword of Defiance, are lost during the final battle. The galaxy shakes. Even protected by the psychic shielding of the rock, the librarians of the Dark Angels are struck down by a shockwave of terror and fell portents. Most of these visions are too fragmentary and fleeting to be recalled in detail, but the revelation experienced by Ezekiel, Grand Master of Librarians, sears itself into his mind. He sees the fallen in their entirety, and their numbers are far greater than the worst fears of the Inner Circle would suggest. Luther had rebuilt the entire First Legion on Caliban, and a vast proportion of them had survived the planet's destruction, trapped within the warp. Ezekiel's vision ends with an image of the galaxy in turmoil, and another truth becomes apparent. Great doom is coming. The Great Rift. At first, all is utter blackness and the stars fade from the skies. But as the time of the Noctis Eterna passes, the Imperium gazes out awestruck upon a new horror. The Cicatrix Maledictum, commonly called the Great Rift, splits reality across the galaxy. A hole in real space hundreds of times greater than the Eye of Terror. The rock is caught within the Imperium Nihilus sector, the galactic north that is wholly cut off from the Emperor's Astronomicon. The rock besieged. Even as the Noctis Eterna passes, the rock is invaded. A demon army, led by the fallen demon prince Marbas, penetrates the formidable shields that surround the asteroid base. Fighting takes place along the docks, within the grand halls, and even in the labyrinthine sublevels and dungeons that burrow deep into the rock. As the conflict reaches its climactic point, the invaders disappear with the same suddenness with which they manifested, having ultimately achieved little beyond mindless slaughter and destruction, or so it is believed. There is one, however, that knows otherwise. In the deepest dungeon, a secret prisoner known only to the Supreme Grand Master of the Dark Angels has been set free. Azrael suspects the entire battle was merely a diversion, so that nefarious agents could accomplish their true task. Yet it is a theory he must keep to himself, for none could know of Luther's imprisonment. Massacre at Darkmoor. Elements of half a dozen Unforgiven chapters descend upon the shrine world of Darkmoor, including multiple companies from the Angels of Vengeance, the Consecrators, and the Guardians of the Covenant. All have followed their librarians' scryings to the planet, searching for the newly materialized fallen. It is not long before they discover that they are not the hunters, however, but the hunted. The warp storms that subsided to allow their armies into Darkmoor's orbit return in force. On the planet's surface, the Unforgiven find the world's vast cathedrals in ruins, and its populace slaughtered. Awaiting in ambush are armies of demons, Chaos Marines and renegades. What follows is the worst single incident of losses suffered by the Unforgiven since the Forgotten Wars. Less than 100 Space Marines from an original contingent of 1,000 managed to escape, and they do so only because they pursue Cypher, who, in his attempt to flee, leads them to a secret teleportation device. The Primarch Summit. In the wake of recent catastrophic events, Azrael decides to convene an emergency council of the Unforgiven Supreme Grand Masters, several of whom are still nearby following the Darkmoor Massacre. The Dark Angels librarians succeed in piercing the veil of the Great Rift and sending out a scattered astropathic summons, though several die to achieve the feat. And soon every loyal son of the Lion is preparing to embark on a perilous journey to the Rock. Not all find their way to that last fragment of their ancestral home. Entire successor chapters become lost in the warp, while others find themselves bogged down in one of the galaxy's many raging conflicts. It is when Azrael finally decides he can wait no longer for the remaining successors to arrive that he is informed of a new fleet transitioning into orbit around the Rock. It is not a waylaid chapter of the Unforgiven it bears, however, but the Lord Commander of the Imperium. Azrael, his forces depleted and his chapter stronghold battered, fears the worst. That a newly returned Primarch of the Ultramarines, Reboot Guilliman, knows the truth of the Dark Angel's hidden past, and brings judgment with him. Debating whether to order the withdrawal of the assembled Unforgiven chapters, or to make a stand and take up arms against the Primarch's delegation, at last the Supreme Grand Master decides upon neither, allowing Guilliman's fleet to dock without incident. It soon becomes clear that the Lord Commander and the remaining ships of the Indomitus Crusade fleet come not to deliver censure, but much-needed reinforcements. From the depths of Belisarius Corps' vast freighter hulk march Primaris Space Marines, created from the purest genetic material ever taken from Lionel Johnson. Rank upon rank of them enter the Rock, clad in new variants of armor painted in the colors of the Dark Angels and their successors. At a brief war council, Guilliman outlines the threats facing the Imperium and his plans to continue the Indomitus Crusade. He also speaks of the updated Codex Astartes and how his brother L. Johnson's descendants have earned the right to maintain their specialized wings, as long as they continue to serve the Emperor well. So do Azrael and the other Supreme Grand Masters kneel before Guilliman and pledge their chapter to the new Imperium. The Dark Imperium. In the darkest reaches of the galaxy, shorn from the light of the Emperor, Azrael can more easily coordinate the inner circle, responding to the myriad distress calls that flood in from the isolated and warp-storm-battered worlds of the galactic north. In addition to breaking sieges and rescuing beleaguered populations, the Dark Angels and their successors continue the hunt for the Fallen, especially pursuing any signs of Cypher and the demon Prince Marbas. Warzone Stygius. The Changeling instigates uprisings all across the storm-racked Imperium Nihilus, leaving entire star systems ripe for invasion. The Dark Angels and several Unforgiven chapters join the campaign against the changed hosts of Tzeentch, fighting alongside the Mordian Iron Guard and the Space Wolves against countless renegades and the Thousand Suns Traitor Legion. Although tensions between the Dark Angels and Space Wolves are high, the situation is so dire that there are no conflicts between them, save only the ritual combat between champions. Initial losses are swiftly recuperated, but it soon becomes apparent that they can no longer achieve victory. Only the unexpected appearance of an Eldari strike force from Ulthway allows the Space Marines to safely withdraw, leaving much of the Stygius system to its fate beneath the minions of Tzeentch. Inner tribulations. Immediate concerns over the Primaris Space Marines are assuaged as the new warriors adapt to the Unforgiven's ways of war and perform well alongside their battle brothers. The Inner Circle remains hostile to their presence, however, for the newcomers have not gone through the long indoctrinations nor heard the carefully built-up apocryphal tales that prepare them to one day hear the truth. As campaigns progress and decades pass, many of the primary Space Marines gain veteran status, and it remains only a matter of time before a decision must be made to initiate one into the Deathwing. The Darkest Angels. Rumours, psychic signatures, and the torture-wrought confessions of captured prisoners tell of a mustering within the darkest recesses of the warp-shrouded Nihilist sector. They speak of a gathering of many of the fallen, a corrupted legion reassembling in numbers enough to bring the entire galaxy to heel. Azrael alone suspects the truth of who is leading them.